Hello, crafty friends. My name is Jessica, and welcome back to my channel. Today, I have a card for you where we're going to do a little bit of ink blending over a stamp and embossed image, and then we're going to use the bleaching method. I'm going to switch up the inks, so don't get attached to those purples through the positively saturated ink line, as those are going to change. But we're going to go ahead and use this floral stamp set from Simon Says Stamp. I absolutely love the shape of this floral, and it is so much fun to color. So we're going to go ahead and center it on this panel, since this is going to be a one layer panel, or at least we're creating all of our stamped images and the technique on the panel. For this, I am using Simon Says Stamp 130-pound cardstock. This is not water cardstock, but it will hold up to this technique that we're doing. So I'm going to go ahead and emboss it with Simon Says Stamp Antique Gold. This is my favorite gold embossing powder. I love how warm it is. It's so beautiful. And then we're going to go ahead and grab the Terracotta ink from the most recent trio released by Simon Says Stamp in their Positively Saturated line. I fell in love with this very beautiful, warm, orangey red, and it's just so good. So here I am loading up the brush, and I'm trying to tap that color into the bristles, and then I'm also tapping off. I wanted to go in with a really light hand because I want to be able to build this color up, so that I wasn't over blending outside of the stamp image. So what I'm doing is I'm focusing the color in the middle and then very slowly creating a halo around all of the embossed images. The reason why you want to go light-handed is because you don't want to have heavy brush strokes, and sometimes that can happen if your brush is overloaded. So once I get the results that I'm looking for, that soft orange halo, I'm going to go in and add just a little bit more color to the middle to brighten it up there. And then we're going to start the bleaching technique. And how you do that is that you just use a paintbrush and water. You can use a water brush as well, but I'm just going to spray a little bit here on an acrylic block. And this is just an old brush I've had probably since high school in my art classes, that I'm just laying the water down. And this is just a little bit of a process. It takes some time for the ink to come up off the panel. And as I'm going, I'm just laying the water on pretty thickly, letting it sit, and then pulling it up there with the paper towel. Now, I do have to go over it a couple times, but I'm really focusing on those heavy petaled florals, the three of them there. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm adding the water, kind of brushing it up, kind of getting that water to settle down into the ink that I just laid, and then picking it up with the paper towel. Now, I'm not being very careful in the fact that I'm not ensuring that I'm getting every petal. It does create a lovely little layering effect when we start to add the additional colors. Now, I've had success with this where I use the bleaching technique and I get a totally different color, and I'm left it like that. I'll link an example of my original card that I did this technique with below. I used a purple, and when I did the bleaching technique with the water, it came up pink, and so it created this really ethereal, mystic kind of quality. When this one with the bleaching technique, it's just coming up a lighter orange, which is fine because we're going to go ahead and we're going to add some ink on top of this to kind of get some different color variations. So here I'm just showing you what that bleaching technique is doing and what it's looking like so far. I am going in multiple times. I'm seeing where ink is heavy, adding more water, dabbing off, adding more water, dabbing off. This paper holds up so well with all of the water that I'm putting on there, and I know I'm not letting it sit an entirely long time, but it does not start to peel like some of the cardstock does. Now I'm going in and just going to do a really light layer to all the rest of the petals and the leaves. In my mind, I'm already pivoting to using Distress Oxides because the oxides are going to be a really great ink to put on top of this, because you're still going to get that beautiful pigmented ink where the dye inks might become muddied and the pigments are going to sit on top. So that's why I end up pivoting, and the colors that I choose, I didn't need to have the undercolor totally bleached out. So While I love the positively saturated inks, I am going to go ahead and put those back in their spots, and we're going to pivot to Distress Oxides. So I'm starting with Seedless Preserves, and I'm just going to go ahead and all of these are very petaled flowers. We're going to go ahead and put that color down. Now I'm laying down one layer of color, and then I'm going to go back in once it's dried and do a little bit of variation by just tapping, and we'll talk about that when it's happening, but just to create a little bit of shadows and lights, and not really caring, but just want to create a little bit of dimension. So I am kind of tapping off too as well and brushing over that embossed portion. I don't want the oxides to sit on top of the embossed image. So I did use a paper towel to kind of scrub the ink off. It will sit on top of the embossing. Another way that I have found, and I didn't do it with this card, but if you have ink that's sitting on top of your embossing, sometimes you can reheat and your embossing will come back to the top and push that ink back. And I've had great success with that. I can't be for sure in this exact instant that that would work, but sometimes reheating your embossing will help make it a little brighter. So we are adding the aged mahogany to those tiny little petals. Not a huge difference from that terracotta color that you're seeing, but just a little bit of a hue variation to kind of help them show a little bit of difference. Now we're going in with Evergreen Bough, and this color with this terracotta is so much fun. I'm doing the smaller leaves a little bit heavier, and then I'm going to go in a little bit lighter for those larger leaves just to create a little bit of variation. I could have pulled another green, but I just wanted to keep this card really simple with these three colors and just use what I had in front of me. Now I'm just going to finish up these leaves. I do end up going in and adding a little bit more of a concentrated pigment from the evergreen bough to these smaller leaves just to help get them to stand out a little bit more from those larger leaves. I watered down the larger leaves a lot, and so adding in direct ink or ink that's not very watered down will help keep that pigment more vibrant. So now I'm going to go ahead and add some water splatters. And so with that, I went ahead and splattered the panel, and then I went and dried it, and it didn't give me enough, so I went back in a second time. Then I'm going to use a terry cloth here to go ahead and try to pick up. They're pretty subtle. I'll do a quick here. Subtle, you don't really see them a lot. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to grab a jelly roll pen and add some brighter little white spots. I'm not being really mathematical or systematic, whatever you want to call it, on where I'm putting these. I'm just kind of drawing them to my heart's content. You know me, I am a fiddling queen, and so it takes me a while. Oh, and I had this little special guest come to me, so I went ahead and picked that little guest up and took them outside. Yes, I did, to properly let them be where they need to be. I do not know how these things get in our house, but they do. And now that it's spring, they are definitely on the move. So we're just going to wrap this up, putting these lovely little white spots everywhere. I love using this gel pen. It's probably my favorite. I've used 2 or 3, and I always come back to this Sakura gel pen. This is the size 10, and I linked below the medium size in Simon Says Stamps because I'm pretty sure that they're the same, but not 100%, but the size 10 has been great. Size 8 is good. Size 5 gets a little small for creating detail, in my opinion. So that's a quick close-up of the card. I'm going to go ahead and we're going to trim it down, and then we're going to add a sentiment. I'm going to keep it really simple. We're going to use the Simon Says Stamp Postage framed edge, and I went ahead and trimmed it down, and then now I'm trying to decide what sort of sentiment I'm going to use. So I did end up using this Love You sentiment, but first we're going to create the card base, and then we're going to trim down that Love You sentiment for ensuring that it's really thin. I wanted a really thin, close to the lettering. And so we're going to go ahead and do that. And then I end up messing up and doing it off camera. So I apologize for that. I am an over adhesor. Don't come after me. I like a lot of foam tape. So here I am filling that back panel to ensure that we don't get a saggy middle. We're going to go ahead and place it on our card base. You will notice that the cardstock is slightly more creamish for the panel that we use, and that's because the Simon Says stamp 130 pound is on the more cream yellow side, and the Neenah 110 pound card base is a much brighter white. So I went ahead and cut that sentiment down, and now I am just going to line it up to ensure it gets straight, and that's going to be the card for today. All of the supplies that I used are linked below, so be sure to expand the description box. They are also affiliate links, so what that means is if you shop with me, I do earn a small commission at no cost to you. So thanks for joining me today, and I hope that you have a wonderful day. Take care.